I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Steve McKinney, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
I'm good.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's snowy again.
Again.
It's like we were talking about. It's as if our city decided a week ago when it snowed 10 inches to not clean the streets. And then, a week of packing that snow down goes by and it's ice. And now we have another fresh layer on it.
I was a little panicked this morning because when it snowed last Sunday or whenever it snowed Saturday, I was trying to get out of the driveway, and I'm on kind of the main street, so they had plowed the main street, but it had like 6 feet of snow to get out of my driveway. I couldn't get out. I got stuck. So I'm there for a half hour. I'm shoveling. I'm going back and forth. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm panicking. I'm like, I'm going to freeze out here. And this big old guy and his son stopped their car right in the middle, or their truck in the middle of the road. And they go, hey, you need some help? I'm like, yeah, I need help. So I go, I got $17 on me, man. I'll give you all my money. Just push me out. So they got me back. And so I just left it at that.
I have seen this week probably 20 different people, like not stuck on the side of the road, just stuck right in their driveway. I mean, they're all women. I don't know what that's about. And you. But,
I was going to say, that's where I was going with that next.
I don't know where how that goes.
There's some really funny positions that they're stuck in, though. There's one on your street that's like...
And they just left it.
They there.
Said the snow will melt eventually.
That was funny. Yep.
The nice thing about Granite City is that everybody has 6 cars. Only 1 or 2 of them work.
Right.
But all of the other ones are parked in front of the house,
or in the back.
Or in the backyard. Uh-huh. There is, when I walk my dog, there is somebody somehow, and they have like a completely gated yard. It's not a double gate. I have no idea how, but they have probably a 1970 Camaro sitting in their backyard.
Someone lives there.
Yeah, they live in there.
Yeah, that's what
That's their house. That's their residence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that person too that lives there is a squatter. It's not even theirs.
One time, Rufus and I were driving. Went to a conference in California, and we're driving down the road in a rental car, and somebody hits us from behind. It's a van, and so we get out. We're talking to the guy. Rufus goes, "Hey, where do you live?" And he goes, "Here." Like, wait. You just ran into us with your home.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we just let him go, man. It wasn't any damage, but it was just bizarre.
Yeah.
Because that was our response is like, here, what do you mean here?
Yeah, that's a very jiu-jitsu thing to live in your van,
Yeah, down by the river.
Down by the river.
You
You live in a van down by the river.
Yep.
So I thought for us a fun place to start today would be to kind of go off of the fact that Mom has been out of town for 5 days.
Yes.
Have you purchased anything?
Oh, you know what? No, not really. I've been working really hard. Let me think.
Are you sure? Because usually you don't even know for a couple weeks.
I bought a book this morning, a Donald Miller book, Storybook 2.0. I was going to read that. Story Brand 2.0. I think that's it. I don't think I've done anything.
So for context...
Okay.
My mom, right now she's on a vacation trip, but she's done a lot of mission work.
She's done a ton of missions.
She'll be gone sometimes for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks
Correct.
at a time, really big stretches. And it's just become this inside joke for me, you, everybody at our church, everybody that we know, where it's like, Steve always makes these crazy moves when Jen's gone. So do you remember, I've been thinking about that being the opener. Do you remember any of those references of things that we would say? So give me some of the things off the top of your head.
One time she left, I just bought a shotgun. Never shot it. Still haven't shot it. Still in my house, but I bought a shotgun. I think I bought it from Kitchler.
First gun you ever bought. I don't think you're allowed to talk about when Kitchler's selling you guns, man.
Oh, well,
I don't think we should even bring him up.
It was legit, though. He worked at that one place. Where is it?
Rural King?
Yeah, the Rural King. Where he told me that there were water moccasins in the building. And so I've never went back. He said,
Like
literally, they had just an influx of snakes in their building. And he said that he was working at the checkout and a snake came up the pole that he was working as a checkout. He's not afraid of
That's
them.
a plague right there.
Dude, that's crazy.
That place is cursed.
That's Egypt.
Yeah, seriously, I wouldn't mess with that at all. So okay, so
I bought that,
shotgun.
and then one day, I sold the house.
Yeah, you sold our house.
Legitimately sold the house.
Mine and your childhood home.
Yes.
You know, not like we had owned this house for 6 months.
And-
like you had lived in this house for 50 some years.
And there was no conversation. Like, I'm just going to sell this. You're gone. I'm selling.
Today's the day.
Yeah,
You know, today's the day.
yeah.
What else?
I think that was it.
Nope.
Let me think. So I bought a gun, sold the house. I don't remember. What else did I do?
We bought the current Head Nod HQ when Mom was out of town.
That was a pretty big purchase.
That was a big purchase.
Then we shut it down 3 weeks later.
During COVID,
Yeah.
That was a interesting time. But yeah, that is the thing is like when the cat's away, the mice will play, man.
They'll buy.
Yeah, that's what
Buy and sell.
buy and sell. You know, that's always been. But it's been good moves. You know, got out of Madison. That was a good move.
Really a good move.
New HQ, great move. You know, we're in the studio, the bonus room that we got because of it. Yeah, so I'm worried that you didn't purchase anything.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing major at this point. I was going to do some marketing stuff, but I'm just going to wait on that. I have enough business in the gym right now, although we're slow to begin the year.
Mm-hmm.
But the gym business is busy, and it's like I don't want to work any more than I work. And so that would cause me to work more. So I have to really balance that out. I could blow that up with some ads, but I don't want to do that at this point. I got enough business and I don't want to overwhelm my trainers.
And there's like a finite amount of focus that somebody has. And when you start to finite, you looked at me as if I said it wrong.
I was going through my mind. The infinite is the word, but finite is the other word. You're right.
Yeah, I know. Why did you look at me like that?
Because sometimes you mispronounce stuff on your podcast.
I mispronounce stuff all the time, but nobody cares, man. You know, it's not like it's not like I'm an English tutor.
I was going to say, I'm in the position though, if I mispronounce stuff, I'll get texts, messages, and emails.
As a pastor.
You misquoted that scripture. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, if I misquote something,
you misquoted it.
Exactly.
That's not,
you know,
we won't,
if I misquote something and then somebody corrects me for it, if it's online, there's really nothing I can do about it. But if it's in person, I'll beat that person up, right? And it's like, you know what? I mean, I know that the knee cut I taught shouldn't work, but it worked on you there.
There you go.
You know, like, so yeah, I think that's.
But yeah, we made some good purchases in that time frame. So yeah.
This episode is brought to you by BJJ Mental Models Premium and their coaching tier. So if you don't know about the coaching tier of BJJ Mental Models Premium, what it is they have assembled a rock star team of jiu-jitsu coaches to watch your competition footage, to watch your training footage, and even to watch your students' training footage and break down what they could do better, what you could do better, and most importantly, how you can actually implement really high-level ideas into your game. And so if we go to their website and we start to scroll down the list, we have coaches like Brianna St. Marie, world champion, crown champion. We have people like Dominica Avalente, who is a 4-time black belt world champion. We have Josh McKinney, who has 0 world championships, but is known for his designated winner framework to collaborative training, I guess. I don't know. We have Margot Cicerelli. We have Emily Kwok. We have Amanda Brucey. We have Drew Foster, and that is just some of the coaches on this list. And you can actually request coaches specifically to review your footage. Maybe you like one of these people's perspective. Maybe you are the same size as one of these coaches, or just like the game that they play and you want to know more about it. And the coaching tier of BJJ Mental Models, it really is one of the best tools that I know of to get individual, really high-level training in jiu-jitsu. And most importantly, for I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners, you can get half off your first month using promo code JOSH at checkout. And so any of the tiers that you go, maybe you don't go the coaching tier and you just do premium, regardless, you can get half off by using promo code JOSH at checkout. Let's get back to the episode. So I thought I have a bunch of different fan questions on this. When you've come on the last time, I think we must have said something about like next time Steve's on, have questions, because I got multiple things.
Okay.
And I thought one of my favorite ones, and I always love these hypothetical, impossible scenarios because it makes you look at a perspective different.
Okay.
But you started jiu-jitsu at 47, and you're now 63, and you'll be 64.
Couple weeks.
I mean, when this episode comes out, you'll be 64 in like 4 days.
Yep.
And so for you, obviously, you've learned a million things that have allowed you to make it from 47 and still be doing jiu-jitsu and being able to roll at 63, almost 64. If you could tell your 47-year-old self, let's start with just one sentence that you think would be the most helpful thing. You just get to, it's coming from you, so it's important. It's what to live by. What would that sentence be?
It would just be 2 words. Calm down.
Calm down.
That would be the thing, is like when people start jiu-jitsu, they're so tense and you're so intense. And that's where, the injuries come from overuse of force. And so, that's the big thing, is just to calm down and let the game come to you, so to speak, and just kind of learn those things. I mean, you try to force so much stuff when you're new. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I would just say that would be my thing. Learn to relax when you roll, but that takes time. And when you're starting out, you don't really know winning or losing per se, or what that looks like, or even how to lose properly. You know what I'm saying? And so that would be my big thing, though, is just learning how to roll a little bit easier and not using a ton of strength.
What would you say? Because that's like, I agree. And people say that, right? Oh, tap early, tap often.
But they don't do it.
Exactly. There's all these catchphrases that, especially older guys, that they tell the younger guys. And then when I watch them roll, they'll get competitive with each other, with a younger guy, with whatever, and put themselves in harm's way. They'll put themselves at potential to not be able to train jiu-jitsu long-term, and it's like the win today makes you sacrifice jiu-jitsu tomorrow. And how do you convey that to somebody? These guys are morons is what I'm trying to tell you. How do you convey it?
When thinking back on when you started, you would get caught in a submission, but you don't know when to tap before something really hurts. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Going back to yesterday, I'm rolling with Goldie, and I was just playing some bottom stuff, and I was doing some wrestle up. I've been, I work on that a lot, and he's pretty good at sprawling. And at one point, I wrestled up, and he sprawled pretty heavy on me. Had a kind of a darce, and I just, pulled my elbow down a little and blocked it. But there was a point where I was like, oh, that's getting a little tight. And so, I adjusted, but had that went a little further, I would have just tapped right there. You know what I'm saying? And so learning when to and when not to, I think, is really important as well. And so we did 3 10-minute rounds yesterday. So you're not rolling hard. I mean, I roll as hard as Goldie rolls is kind of how I do it. Sometimes he goes after me pretty hard. So I have to turn it up a bit, but you can't roll hard for 10 minutes at my age. You just can't.
Tell me about that training specifically. You've been training. Goldie's one of our purple belts. How old is Goldie?
He is 52.
52. He's coming off of a shoulder injury. Did that happen at work or did that happen at?
It happened training.
Training. Okay. And so he's coming off of a shoulder injury. Obviously, is needing to take care of himself too.
Yes.
What does that look like? What does that training switch look like? What is your, what is, and not only what does it look like, why is that your training? Because that's a lot of your main training now is you do it on Thursday. You guys roll for a period of time. what's the why, and then what is the what?
I use that. What I find is that kind of rolling, it really works on your timing very well. You get your timings better. And then the other thing I noticed too is your dominant positions, you'll get to those more often. So you begin to know what positions you're good at.
Yeah.
That's the things that I notice, but you'll also find weak areas. So like for me, trying to come up from the bottom, like my top game's pretty good. My bottom game I could use some work on. So I've just been working on that a lot. I was watching some open guard stuff from Henry. I'm like, I'm going to work on that and see. And he actually explains it pretty well. I had not seen much of his open guard stuff. So anyway, that's what I was working on yesterday. And so that is just my way of working on holes in my game.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking at.
So you go into the training with a focus.
Mm-hmm, always with a focus. Like yesterday was bottom game, wrestle up, work on my scarves.
Okay.
So that was my day.
So you go in with a focus. You have a training partner you can trust.
Yeah.
What would you say the pace generally is? I know you did say that you guys
60 to 70.
Okay.
Usually it's 50, but with Goldie it's a little bit higher because he will, like I said, he wants to get, like, have you ever rolled with someone and you kind of do pretty good with them, but then they almost get a dominant position on you. And then when they get that dominant position, you can hear them breathing and grinding and coming after you. You know what I'm talking about there? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I feel with him a lot. He's like, I'm close on this one. So, we'll talk a little bit in the middle of it, but yeah, that's the big thing. And he has stuff he works on as well, so that, that is, he always comes in with this. What he'll do is on Thursdays, he comes and trains with me, and then he goes and trains with Rosencutter. And then what he'll do is I'll tell Rosencutter what I did and try to come up with a solution, because sometimes I'll hit a good hip bump off the closed guard with him because he'll posture up too hard. And so that was his thing yesterday, and he was able to defend it a little
Good,
bit. Yeah.
good.
So,
all right, so training partner you can trust, come in with a focus. And then I think the other big thing that's really important on this is that you do it every week.
consistency.
And I think the consistency matters so much because, one, it's like you stay in it, you stay physically able to do jiu-jitsu. But I really think the consistency matters too, because you will see yourself getting better at jiu-jitsu. And that's the most important thing for people staying on the mat is, I think, like having fun with it, but also noticing their own progression. Like jiu-jitsu can be fun, but if you just never get any better, it's very discouraging.
It is.
And that's something that I note on that training too, is that every Thursday, when I get into whether I'm going to record or, just teaching class or whatever, when I get in, you guys are there and you're doing your rounds.
I'm usually mounted.
You're usually trying to beat Goldie down. And I'll walk in and
it's all just pressure.
And Goldie will be like, dude, what's happening? Your dad's getting better as he's getting older. I don't know.
That was his thing yesterday. My buddy Nip, as he was leaving, he called me, he goes, Steve, that old boy you were rolling with, he looked beat up when he left, man. He said, you're getting better and not older. I'm like, oh, yeah, he got beat up a little yesterday. So
Nip, totally off topic. Nip, probably the favorite person that I know.
He's such a good guy.
Probably the best guy that I know.
He and I, what year was it? Maybe 80, I'm not sure, 70, no, 85, 86. I don't remember exactly, but both all-staters in softball. We won the state tournament. It was a big deal, man, because it was huge around our area. So he was a pitcher, and he had played a lot of handball, so he had really good reactions. And so he was tough up the middle. And so, yeah.
How old is Nip now?
70. Still training, super slow, and once a week hitting it hard. Jeff was training him yesterday, blasting away. He's still in it.
Still can hit pull-ups?
He tore his bicep a while back. That normal old man tear that goes from the top down.
Man.
So, yeah. So
I remember him in his 60s being able
to weighted pull-ups.
Knock out weighted pull-ups, but also while he was still in the fire department in his 60s, no one could beat him in a pull-up competition when you did actual all the way down, all the way up pull-ups.
Full range, no kipping, full range motion. Yeah, he's just really good at it. He was one of my guys too. Man, I've trained him for a long time, But he was one of my guys that we, like developed diet practices with
Each other.
yeah, just, that's kind of how I developed everything, just with trial and error and what works, what doesn't, what can people do, not what is good in theory, what's actually good in practice. But he had a guy, he told me, the guy's name was Eddie McGovern, maybe something like that. But he said he was really overweight. In the firehouse, every meal is a banquet. They cook top to bottom, man. They just do. And so he said that Eddie fell in love. And so what he did was they would eat 3 meals a day, right? He never changed his foods, but he only ate 1 plate, and he lost a ton of weight doing that. And so 3 meals a day, just eating 1 plate, not changing his food. Once again, going back to, you hear a lot of things nowadays on diet and things like that, but the bottom line is calories matter. That's never going to change, calories in, calories out. Now, there are nuances around that, but basically, that one guy, what was his name? Gary, is it Tobbs? Maybe it was Gary Tobbs. But he had a diet. It was called the Twinkie diet. I've told you about that before. So he reduced his caloric intake as a whole, but he only ate processed food. The only real food he would eat some canned green beans, if you can call that real, with his family at dinner because he didn't want his boys, they were young, he didn't want them seeing what he was doing there. But he lost over 20 pounds and lowered his cholesterol and the whole 9 yards. Eating processed food, which is crazy now, I don't suggest that. But weight loss has to do with food intake. And so that was Nip and I. And so then Nip and I went to different fasting methods, trying that type of stuff. He used to weigh 175, 180. He's probably 140 now. But he was fat at that weight, And so now he's in a really good shape, does walking every day and follows the system. So
That's funny that you said that. I remember when I used to do personal training and train Nip, I remember him telling me that story of the 1 plate. And he's like, and that's what I do now. He's like, that's my...
Eat what you want, just eat less.
And that is such a hot take right now, that when it comes to what you weigh, that calories are what matters.
I know.
People will be mad. People are going to be in the comments of this. And so let's not leave that.
Okay, so
topic.
Here's the theory. Okay, so here's the alternate theory. I give you a couple of different thoughts. Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Eric Berg, they're low carb guys. So their theory is don't count calories, right? And so what they say is that insulin matters. If you can control insulin, that weight loss happens. I don't believe that to be completely true, but they say control insulin, okay? And that's where it happens. They say that fat loss stops when insulin elevates. But here's my problem with that. I will see those guys advise people, and someone will say, hey, listen, I am on this keto diet, the fasting diet. Fung he's great. They're great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just observational critic,
of course,
from this. And so what he did, he wrote the fasting code, I think it is, the obesity code, the cancer code, but it's all based on intermittent fasting, low-carb dieting, high-fat dieting, okay? And then Eric Berg's, he's got a lot of good information as well. But what they'll advise people on is they'll say, oh, well, you're not losing weight. Oh, well, you're eating too much fat, okay? Wait a minute. That's not what you're saying initially. So what you're saying is if you're eating too much fat, what does fat equal? 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So you're eating too many.
And then for context, 1 gram of protein is 4. 1 gram of carb is 4.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you're eating too much fat. You're eating too many calories. Still the bottom line. They used a different language. So that's one theory. So the idea behind that is when your body becomes, reduces glucose and glycogen in your muscles and in your system, and your body then will become a fat burner, but you have to make sure that you eat enough fat so that it actually burns fat for fuel. Now, when that happens, you'll have mental clarity, you'll feel better. It's really hard to stay on for a long period of time, though, but you will notice that it does work. The problem is that it's a pretty restrictive diet, but it does work for people. And then when you're burning fat, the idea then is that your hunger, the fat levels give you satiety. They make you feel full. So you'll vicariously eat less food by osmosis, if that makes sense. So that's one theory. Another theory is a lady named Barbara Rolls. I think she did her research at Penn State University. I think it was Penn State. She wrote a book called Volumetrics. And the idea behind that is using hormones for controlling your food amounts. Okay, so when your body gets hungry, it releases a hormone. The hormone's called ghrelin. Ghrelin says, hey, I'm hungry. Feed me or I'll starve. So it's our God-given design so that we don't starve. It's a signal that happens in your stomach. And it sends a signal to your brain via the hormone ghrelin. And then what that takes is 15 to 20 minutes to get your brain when you get hungry. Okay? There's another hormone when you get full. The hormone's called leptin. And when you get full, leptin then says, okay, if you eat enough, you don't need to eat anymore. All right? So with that said, leptin, though, takes 45 to 60 minutes to that hormone to get into your system. Okay. So now I'll just go back because we're in term on my book. All right. So with my book, what I tell people to do, you can use those things to your advantage, but right when you finish dinner, within 15 minutes, take a 30-minute walk. The reason behind that is if you're in a caloric deficit, and you eat the right foods, that leptin takes 45 to 60 minutes. So a 15-minute break with a 30-minute walk equals 45 minutes. So you're in the window of now you're feeling full. Also, that walk aids in digestion. So what they do then is they say eat foods that are high in volume because everyone eats the same volume of food. But if you eat different foods, for example, fruits, vegetables, those foods fill your stomach up, thus releasing the hormone leptin. And over time, you'll eat less food. Clarence Bass, who wrote the book Ripped in 1970, bodybuilder guy, he used that theory. But most of those theories they're way less meat, very low protein diets, and very high carbohydrate diets. So that's another theory with that.
And yes, I mean, again,
But you're still eating less calories.
You are still eating less calories. So all of these hacks, okay, so we're going to do the Mediterranean diet. Okay, we're going to do the, whatever the diet is.
Yeah.
Most of them are going to limit processed food. That's going to be a very common thing.
Huge.
And one of the biggest things that you'll notice in processed food is to make food on a large scale taste good, you have to add a lot of fat, a lot of salt, or a lot of sugar, or some mixture of those things. Those things, obviously, salt is not effective with the calories that you is not a calorie, but fat and sugar are very, very high calories. And the difference in when I eat the fat in a Cheeto's puff, as delicious and beautiful and orange and vibrant and amazing as they are, when you take a bite, it melts in your mouth. If you took the equivalent amount of fat from pot roast and you took that bite, it would it wouldn't melt in your mouth. You would have to chew it. Your tongue actually is your indicator from your body because we've actually eaten real food for a very long time. Your tongue is your first indicator to start to tell you that you're getting full. And so by eating real food, a lot of times you can correct your body's signals to say, hey, you need more. But that is why we can consume 1,000 grams of fat in a bag of Cheetos, no problem, after dinner, is because it tricks and this is by design. They literally pay people very, very, a lot of money. They're professional taste testers. It's not like I'm going to hire Steve and Josh. It's like we have a new food product and we need to bring in the best taster in the world. And his job is not just to take a bite and say that's good. His job is to decide whether or not people will keep eating it. Because the goal from Chester Cheetah is to get you to eat the whole bag of Cheetos. Because why? You're addicted to Cheetos and now you need more.
Exactly. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
So the theory behind that too is it's food addiction. So there's a guy named Dr. Rob Sivas on YouTube, and he's the food addiction doctor, carb addiction doctor. But that's what he talks about. I have clients come in, and I'll sit with them, and they're grossly overweight at times. And I will explain to them, I just talk to them about diet. And then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, permission to speak freely. Here's what you're dealing with. You are a carbohydrate, you're a food addict. Mm-hmm. And I go, and if you're an addict, you have to cut those foods out. like there'll be soda drinkers or, you have people 15, 20 sodas a day. And it's like, well, can I only have one? I'm like, listen, let me tell you something. Let's say you got a crack addicted friend and they come here and they ask me, hey,
Can I just smoke one rock of crack today, bro?
right?
I don't know. Can you?
It's the same addiction, though. I mean, it's humorous and it's sad because it's not only do they have taste testers, what they do is they do MRIs of the brain when the food is eaten, and it lights up the same area of the brain that drugs do. So those pleasure centers are being stimulated, and the food, you're not hungry. So like you said, though, when you eat that, it sends this signal to your brain, and you're like, boom, that pops in your brain. Once you stop eating, it takes about 3-4 months before that addiction will finally go away. Once you start eating real food, though, it's a total difference in how food tastes and how full feels, because most people don't know what full feels like. And so it's just you're eating mindlessly. And I don't know if this is true, but I read where once the cigarette companies, I don't know if you've read this, but when the cigarette companies got sued, what they did was they transferred over to food companies, and they created the same addiction process in the middle of it. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense if you think about it, because food is made, any processed food, that's the whole idea. Even a McDonald's hamburger is designed in the way that the cheese, the ketchup, the mustard, the pickles, onions, whatever's on there, they're put in a particular place to create that addiction. So all those things are real, but I still stay with that calories matter argument. It just, it's just calories in, calories out is never going to change.
And they actually ran into a problem when it came to cheeseburgers, because cheeseburgers aren't that bad, brother. Like they're not. There's a study that just came out recently that said it's actually better to order a second burger than to order a side of fries. And it had to do with the protein, how long you'll feel full from it, things like that. But the thing is, people don't order a second burger. It's very uncommon to do that. And the way to get people to do that, and the reason is because of the amount of fat, and it's real fat from the meat. And so the only way to cut through that fat and to get people to, eat more was to add a soda with every drink, because sugar allows you to break that fat up, and it allows you to, I'm saying this as if this is this evil thing. There are times post-tournament that I will order a soda just so I can eat more food.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I will be like, man, if I get a Sprite with this, if I get wild and I get a Shirley Temple with this, oh my gosh, I'll eat 100 of these Buffalo Wild Wings wings.
You remember what Uncle Dennis said, right?
Two things from my uncle that always are in my head. One was always that it's crunch time next Monday.
Yep.
Next Monday we're getting back on the diet, guys. Don't worry. And you would always say that with a plate of food. But the other thing was, just don't stop eating. You'll get full.
Yeah, he goes, eat fast because you can eat more.
Yep. We have a wise family.
We do. Yeah. Not best for digestion, but it does work.
And yeah, just that last note though that you had kind of said is it takes months to change that.
Man, we are so inundated with processed food. It's super addicting for most people, and it really is. It's a challenge, So you have to really discipline yourself not to. And I think intermittent fasting has been a pretty good go-to for controlling that. I can't do 5 or 6 small meals a day. That's just an obsession.
Yeah,
I can't do that stuff. So
I think there's so much to just eating real stuff. And that's like when we said that calories are king in our opinion when it comes to what you weigh, but in how you weigh affects greatly how you feel. Mm-hmm. But you can still eat badly at a lower calorie and you will still get you can eat a certain amount of sugar and get an inflammatory response from that, question. Even if it's a lower amount of calories, And so it's not to say that you should not think about anything but the calories. But if you are thinking about losing weight and then you go on to the list of millions of health problems that come from, or that we think come from being overweight, you go, oh, well, I can eliminate all of these problems. I can, or at least put myself at so much less risk of all of these problems by simply eating less food.
Well, and you're right. What you said, though, is really important. It's not just eating less food. It's eating quality food. That's really the argument that people have when it comes to calories. They're like, if you eat more, like somebody said, oh, well, you can eat 1,000 calories of Cheetos, but you can't eat 1,000 calories of broccoli. Well, who would want to eat 1,000 calories of broccoli? That's not even a legit argument.
Yeah.
But eating food that has more volume, more nutrients is going to make a huge difference. But I wrote down Ozempic with that because that's the new thing to counter the mental stuff that goes along with food addictions. And so what do you have thoughts on Ozempic? Because I do, because I deal with people who.
So as Ozempic has gotten big, I haven't been a personal trainer as much. I'm sure it would be in my face significantly more. I will say that I've heard podcasts. I think that it got really, really big. The Tucker Carlson, where he had the husband and wife on. I forget what their names are. They are.
I think I saw that one.
I mean, everybody was on it. It was very. People will be mad at me for saying it because it was pretty anti-vaccine too, but it was very anti-Ozempic, and it wasn't anti-Ozempic. It's like, oh, these are what could happen. It was like this. They said Ozempic is it's like it's labeled a certain way. They know that it's going to kill a lot of people, and they have money saved for that.
That's how Big Pharma works, though.
That's insane. And because of a law passed, I don't know when it was passed, there is zero repercussion if you do kill a lot of people with a drug that you made. None. I mean, obviously you can pay for it, but there is no criminal, even though you release something knowing that it is going to kill a lot of people, and then it does. There is no criminal it is not illegal in a criminal sense to murder.
You have to pay money though for people. Yeah, I get it. So,
but okay, so let's say you save $1 billion and you have 10.
I know. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
And that's like, it really is it's really obviously a numbers game.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because I'm faced with, people asking me, hey, should I use this or not? And so my answer generally is, obviously it's their choice. It's not my choice. But I look at that and I say, okay, if you have tried everything and it doesn't work and you're still morbidly obese, you look at what's that going to cost you?
The pros and cons of it.
Right. And so then you weigh them both out. And, because I've told people, I'm like, listen, I know you've tried everything and it's not working for you. So, try it. I mean, I think that in the long run, it's going to be safer than type 2 diabetes, cholesterol medicine, blood pressure medicine. But I can't be sure about that. But I just, I do, there are a lot of behind the scenes things that stomach paralysis that people have. So it leaves food in your stomach for a period of time because it slows down digestion. So that's the idea behind that. So it's never easy to do those things, to make those decisions. But I think it's countering the processed food problem that most people have, or at least trying to counter that. So it's just another one of those things where you look at it and you go, wow, that's crazy. It's really interesting.
And that's kind of like the same for me as if it did keep you from dying of obesity, and it did for a really long period of time, we're all going to die,
Yeah.
Everybody is. And so it doesn't matter if you don't eat meat or if you don't eat vegetables, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And, most of us are looking at life, or at least I think most of the people in my age look at life as this endless game. It's like, you don't even think about it. And I see that, and this is always my reference, and people say I talk about it too much, but my reference is always steroid use in jiu-jitsu. And when I talked to Keenan, he made this joke about, it's weird. All these guys I expected to be dead by now, or they're all fine. But it's like, nah, they're not going to die in their 40s. And Gordon can make a post.
I saw the post.
And he can say, oh, I don't care if it knocked 20 years off my life.
Trust me.
I've heard tons of 30-year-olds say that. I've heard less 40-year-olds say it, less 50-year-olds say it. Nobody's saying it at 60.
You're right.
Nobody's on their deathbed and saying, well, at least I won gold medals.
Yeah. And
No.
the thing about that too, because I saw that post, I'm like, oh man, you know, I don't comment on any of those, but I thought to myself, man, when you get older, trust me, your priorities change when you have children, grandchildren, wife, whatever. You know, you're not going to look at that and say, man, this stuff that's important, this stuff is not that important right now. You know, and there's a point too. I look at that and I go, I guess it depends on the personality.
Say it. It's how a child looks at things.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of that too is how much money is enough in the middle of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like you keep, well, as I think it was Rockefeller who said, they said, how much money is enough?
Just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more. And so we live in this carrot chasing society. Just if I have this carrot, I'm going to be happy. And that doesn't work like that because happiness comes from the inside. Now, once again, I personally like Gordon stuff. I watch him. I love to watch him, train. I'm like, man, that guy is so good. So I'm not, like criticizing that. I'm just saying that I just think that is a not well thought out.
Yeah. I'm absolutely criticizing it because you're telling kids that. I'm absolutely, that's wrong. You're totally wrong in that. And people can do steroids. That's okay. But no, if you do them in a way and you do them excessively, which I've never, just like any other drug, I don't know people are like, oh yeah, I'm a casual steroid user. Mm-hmm. It's like, nah, dude, you get addicted to the pump and then it stops working. And you go bigger, you know?
I was talking to, I was in a HIT group, and they were interviewing Doug McGuff, and they were saying, what questions do you have for Dr. McGuff? And I'm like, I ask him about TRT, and I go, do you find that is, because one of the guys went on it, he was pretty open about it, but I go, do you find that is, people have trouble getting off of that? And his response was, no. He goes that you're addicted to the first shot you take. He goes, once they get you, that's what the clinics do. They get you on that, and now you're feeling good. Well, to come off, you're going to feel bad. You're going to feel really bad because that exogenous shot lowers your natural T levels, and so when you go off of it, then your testes have to produce that T level, the higher T levels again, and it takes a while to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting on how all that stuff plays out.
And that again, or at least. Like, I don't want people to think that I think that steroid use or TRT or Ozempic or any of these things are evil, right? There are just pros and cons to them.
Of course.
And you're never told those. Right. At least when I talk to people like, oh no, there aren't side effects to it. Everybody's on right now. It's all good. It's like, yeah, we're actually in the middle of this countrywide experiment.
Well, that's exactly
where we're putting 30-year-olds on TRT who obviously do not need it. They don't sleep well. They don't exercise. They don't take care of themselves in any way. Of course your hormones are imbalanced. Of course your hormones aren't doing good. And then they're like, oh, but if you took this, you're going to sleep good. You're going to feel good. You're going to have abs. And then you're like, oh, sweet. All these things are great.
And I don't have to work for them.
And then it's like, but at 50, you're going to look like a chewed up piece of rubber. You're going to be red as Santa Claus's suit the time.
From what I've seen with people, and I talk to a lot of people, there are a lot of people who do go off of it. The one thing that I have talked to people about is they're like, after a certain period of time, it becomes your baseline. Your body is dynamic. It's not static. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a baseline for you. So you have to change the baseline. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Your body always wants to find that homeostasis. It wants to find that area that is a balance, and it wants to live in that balance. That's why it's hard to lose weight or it's hard to gain weight, because your body is going to adjust. Your BMR is going to adjust if you lower your caloric intake too low or if you don't do it correctly. So you have to really watch those types of things, and you have to be able to disrupt that. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, your body is really an amazing thing.
And the word balance is so, it's used a lot as a word, not as a practice. You know, there is no, and I think,
I
think
agree.
we
I
all
agree.
struggle with it, right? It's like hey, balance training jiu-jitsu. And it's hard because you're like, jiu-jitsu is this addictive, fun thing. And I want to make sure I protect my body, but it's really hard to not just go hard every night because it's fun.
Yeah, I'm just going to come in and do technique, and we're going to go light.
I was just gonna warm up and see how I feel, you know?
Well,
And then you're out of balance.
You're out of balance. So I was going to say,
Hey guys, Josh here. Just wanted to remind you that we are still a small podcast. I know you're like, man, you guys speak with such authority, but we are still very small when you really look at the sea of podcasts that are out there. And really, one of the best ways for a podcast to grow is for an individual to share it with another individual. But after that, a lot of people find podcasts on search engines. They find it on YouTube, they find it on Spotify, and you only get on search engines if people engage, if people like, if they comment, if they give 5-star reviews. And so while my dad and I are insulting everyone and everything, I thought it would be fun to come on and be like, hey, no, I'm really a nice guy. Please give us a 5-star review, give us a comment, give us a like, but also more importantly on today's episode, 8 days from now, my dad's book, The Gospel of Fitness, comes out. If you could please set a reminder for yourself. If you are interested in buying the book, set a reminder to buy it on the day it comes out. Because when it comes out, it is very important for that first day, just like with any other search engine. Amazon works the same way. And the more people that buy, the more people that comment, the more people that share that with their friends, the more we're going to be pushed to the top of Amazon, and it's going to help us a whole lot. And so that's all I have for you. Let's get back to the episode.
I was actually looking at a study this morning, and this will kind of shift us just a bit, but it was on performance and mental fatigue. And Bryce and I were talking about this before. And what this study was, it was like what they did was they had athletes do a cognitive practice for 90 minutes before they trained. And then another group, they had them just watch a very generic video series for 90 minutes before they trained. And the results were the people who had like a cognitive practice. So for example, you're balancing your bank book, you're doing things that are intense, things that you have to think about. When they trained, their performance suffered, their body burned faster, and they had less cardio. And so kind of what you said there is our society is, for men, for everyone, but it just taking this from a perspective of a man, we are constantly, the standard is set, and the standard is this, do I qualify? Mm-hmm. And so you're always trying to climb the mountain, do this, do that, and perform. Well, guess what happens? You're overworked then, you're overstressed, and then you're lacking sleep. So the things that you're after are the things that are causing the problems. So rather than say, hey, I need to reset my standard here, lower the bar to make this a balanced idea so that I can live the rest of my life in a way that is healthy and prosperous to a certain degree, rather than just driving myself into the ground. I think that's really important to understand that, because the standard's set pretty high, but I think you have to change your own standard in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So.
And yeah, I think there's two thoughts on it. One is, I think that, balance over a long time means sustainability, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's not, that's super important. Longevity is about, that's what you're looking at. It's about sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And that's with all the things that we were bashing. A lot of those things, at least from a completely bro science perspective of myself, who doesn't really know much, they don't seem sustainable. It seems like most of those things have a shelf life.
They do. And as you get older, you have to even be smarter. So like, I'll give you an example of this for workouts and training and all those types of things. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure on how at 63, my body is responding to training. My expectations have to change. Maintaining strength is really important rather than building strength. So anyway, having a routine is the most important thing, and that longevity routine is important. So what I mean by that, getting enough sleep, that's huge. Having enough sleep, having times where you can calm your brain down a bit, quiet time. So I wake up every morning, the first half hour is reading my Bible and having a journal and going through all my stuff. Those things are super important. And even in training, like on Wednesday, I came in, I'm like, okay, I'm going to lift weights today. I'm going to do something completely different. I was reading The Renaissance of Exercise by Ken Hutchins, and he was talking about this guy, because my theory on training is high-intensity training. It's intensity is key, okay? But he was talking about this guy, and he's a minimalist. Hutchins is in a lot of ways, but he had a guy he trained, and he said he did 2 exercises every 8 days. But his focus, and the way we train, you have to really focus on the muscle. He goes, the guy's focus was scary. He did leg presses and pull downs. And he said that watching him train was frightening on how well he was able to do it. And he said he would just be laid out for 10, 15 minutes after. But he made progress for a long period of time. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So what I did the other day was I'm like, okay, I'm going to reduce the number of exercises that I'm using, and I'm going to focus a little bit more. So I did a pull down. Oh, I did an ab. I did an ab machine, and then I did a pull down, a chest press, a leg press, and a calf raise. And man, oh man, 13 minutes and 30 seconds. I measured my time under load for every exercise, making sure I was in that 60 to 90 second range. And it was just very precise, and it was a great workout. It was actually a perfect workout. The problem with the perfect workout is a perfect workout is a moving target. You'll hit it once, and then your body, once again, it's dynamic. It's not static. But I'll try it again. I'm going to do the exact same thing next Wednesday. I'm only going to work out for once a week, hard. My other days are going to be more rehab stuff, just little things that I do, low back and things like that I do. And I'm going to do that for 4 workouts to see how my body does. Then I train Thursday with Goldie, and then I take Friday off, and then Saturday is 4 or 5 hard 5-minute rounds, and that's my kind of routine in the middle of that. But it's precise, and it's a routine. It's not only a daily routine, but a weekly routine, and then I see how my body responds to that. So,
my worldview is obviously everyone's worldview is affected by a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. But what we're talking about, and this is probably my biggest worldview, comes from this. Most of my 30-year-old friends, their 60-year-old dad can't pick up their grandson. And my 60-year-old dad tried to toe hold me hard last Saturday full force.
Yeah, it wasn't full force.
Honestly, you were trying your absolute hardest.
85%.
You were.
Which time? I don't remember.
You were praying to God that it was going to break, and I was going to eat. I'll never tap.
I actually have a really good. I have a really good toe hold, and it comes off of a daily Hiva. And I'll just tell this story.
Tell it.
One time I had Junior, and he daily hit me out. I hit a rolling toe hold, and I had it. It was tight.
Oh, yeah.
It was so tight that...
Junior let it break, man.
It was. You know how when you get something tight, you can see the white?
You can see the bone coming off.
I'm like... I had it. And I'm always careful. I'm always respectful. But I had it pretty tight. I'm like, I'm just going to let that go. And I don't know if you've ever seen Junior get mad.
Junior's always mad,
You ever
bro.
see him? Did you see what he did to Mario? But anyway, I let it go, and Junior tore my hamstring in half. He got me the knee bar, tore my. I'm like, oh, Junior, I'm sorry, bro. So yeah, he went hard.
Listen, this sounds wrong, but man, Brazilians are bad people, right?
Yeah, just people are people. You know? Junior's a blast, though. He's such a good dude. He really is.
That's like the Junior angry are the best Junior stories because they're most of the Junior stories.
Yeah, man, it was funny when Mario had kicked him in the face, I think, and Junior was trying to kick him back. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an easy kick, though.
Oh, no. And Junior was a soccer player,
he's
man.
He's a very passionate person, you know? And so, yeah, that's the fun part. But he's a fun guy.
And honestly, too, on the Junior shout-out, another one of my favorite people in the world. You know,
by far. He's just a great guy.
he has always been so good to me, always been so good to us since
He's
we've
very
known him.
kind, and he's actually very humble. When I roll with him, I'll like, Junior, that's 2 points. No, bro.
Oh, that's not 2 points.
yeah.
I'm always down 2 points, no matter who I'm rolling with. Like, Junior, I've submitted this guy 6 times. Like, Josh, 5 seconds left. You're down. You got to go. I'm not down, dude. He's not. He's dying over there. Yeah, Junior. He's last week at Revive. Shout out Crutchfield and Lawrence. We made those guys after class fight
To the death.
and then we bet on it. And so Kyle and Junior bet on a meal on those guys fighting live from the feet. We all just sat around and...
Was it good?
Oh, it was amazing. It was 10 out of 10.
Wow.
We should do it every Friday, to be honest.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's the... Revive's always fun. So this was we kind of referenced this a little on the toe hold, but one of the questions I got from somebody before this episode was, has Josh ever beat someone up who went too hard on Steve?
Yeah. Will not mention.
I had the same thought.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like it's happened a few times, quite a few
people
times
They just freak out, man.
when a
It's
60-year-old starts to put it on them.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's not, it's interesting. But yeah, I'll just leave that one alone because it's stupid. You
And
know what I'm
then-
saying? It's frustrating as an old guy to have that kind of stuff happen. Yeah.
And then, yeah, but it's nice to always have in your back pocket that you got your boys, Junior and Josh, ready to go in an instant, ready to fight anyone to the death. You know?
I hate that though, because I want to just kill people myself. You know what I'm saying?
I
Not
get
kill
that.
people, you know what I'm saying?
I get that, but it's
As
like,
you get older, though, you have to accept that fact that, so I've learned how to handle that stuff. Is just like, oh yeah, just go right into a defensive.
well, and at a point, the Godfather just has to have henchmen.
Man,
you know?
there was one time I was somewhere rolling, and there was a new guy in the gym. He was probably 260, and I looked over and he's on the wall as I'm rolling, waiting for me. Right after the roll, immediately runs in and I'm like, bro,
Did you tell me to beat him up?
No, actually, I actually did really well with him, believe it or not.
Beat him down.
Yeah, so
Sometimes it's like that,
Yeah.
you know. The mat, there aren't real rules when it comes. Obviously, we don't punch each other in jiu-jitsu. We don't, there are rules like that, but there aren't written rules of like how you should roll with a girl,
Right.
how you should roll with somebody
Right.
who's older, how you should roll with somebody who's smaller. Really isn't, and it's kind of different for each interpretation. But there's this popular saying, and I'll paraphrase it, but it's that you F around and you find out,
Yeah.
right? And that's how the jiu-jitsu world is. It's built around that. It is like a lot of times you don't realize till months later, like, oh, that's why they beat me up that way. That's why these guys did this to me. And it's just like a lot of times you're just not aware.
Yeah, that's it.
But what's nice about jiu-jitsu is you become aware.
you do after one time like that. You're like, okay, I did wrong there. I should,
Mm-hmm.
adjust. And so, yeah,
And when people will say like, oh, that jiu-jitsu teaches you humility, anytime, obviously the criticism on jiu-jitsu usually becomes physical. It's like, I'm criticizing how you rolled with that person, so I'm beating you up. I'm not verbalizing it to you, right? Often. But obviously it's helpful if somebody doesn't know any better. But a lot of times people do know better. And, they've been told this, and then it's like, that's the criticism is that you're going to we called the big boys out, the enforcers out, and they're going to beat this person down. And anytime you're faced with criticism, it's like an insult is different than criticism, right? An insult is me pointing out something that is bad with no care that it gets fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I criticize, ideally, I'm pointing out something that is bad with the intention, with the care about you that you would fix it,
yeah,
right?
make it fixable.
And most people, either way, an insult or criticism is just the same to them. and they can't handle it, right? And you get this physical criticism in jiu-jitsu where you get beat up and you go, oh, wow, maybe I should adjust. And that when people say like, oh, jiu-jitsu makes you more humble or jiu-jitsu does this, it changes people. It's you doing something dumb, it getting corrected, and then you going, hey, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to cry in my car. I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to change that. And you do that ideally a lot, and that is when people have that thought of like, jiu-jitsu does change you. I think that's where it comes from, is that you're constantly being quote unquote criticized with how you're acting, but most of the time it's not even verbal. Most of the time it's how it is, you know?
Yeah, I remember going as a white belt going really hard with someone, and it was like, hey man, calm down. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was going that hard, you know? So I try to be super aware of that. Do you remember when the guy came in from out of town and messed Viv up? Remember that one?
Oh yeah, we beat
everyone
that dude
torched
down.
that guy.
Yeah, that's and you don't, whatever
because
you
he's a
do,
new white belt, and
you don't beat up somebody who is quote unquote powerless that everyone likes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you'll die for that.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't. It's not a good call.
I got
you
it.
know.
Yep.
Let's go next listener question. Any tips to keep your kids in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, make it fun. Make it. That's the one thing I've seen over and over and over, that people take this stuff. Parents take it so seriously, and you just got to make it fun, not make it a win-loss thing, especially when they're young, because it's going to benefit them in the long run. So I just think that's the big thing, and it's so hard as a parent. It's very natural to be competitive. You know, you want them to do well. And my thing is like, you don't get to coach kids on the sideline unless you're training. That is like I don't like that stuff. There's certain things I don't like when people come to class and they don't pay attention. Like, dude, you put the work in here, and you're trying to teach people stuff. And so I think it's not coaching them in a wrong way. Just like, hey, you lost, no big deal, man. Let's have an ice cream or whatever. That way we can have you food addiction. You can come to the gym when you're older for personal training.
Perfect. It goes full circle.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really important. And of course, you want them to do well. You don't want to just say, hey, go in and lose. I think it was Helio who said to, maybe it was Hoyler, he goes, hey, do you want to compete? He's like, oh, I don't know exactly the framework, but I'm scared. He goes, I'll give you $10, win or lose. Doesn't matter. And so that was his motivation. That could be an inaccurate story, but it was something like that. But it was just like, hey, just get out there, try it, have fun, see what happens. And I think that's really important. But I've seen a lot of kids quit because of the pressure that their parents put on them. It's like, oh man, that's just unfortunate.
And it's not just jiu-jitsu,
No, it's in every sport. You see it all the time.
It is. And there is, and there is also
kicking and screaming. It's a great.
It's the best movie ever. It really is. Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell.
Juice box boy. Juice box boy. Give me juice.
You're the juice box boy. When I quote that movie all the time. Anytime I get a dumb question at the gym, and to be fair, my rating system of dumb question is brutal. You can barely ask. You can pretty much ask nothing. It's not a fun environment. You shouldn't train here.
It is terrible.
There's the point in the movie where one of the dads does something, and Will Ferrell looks at him, and he goes, "You know what? Take a lap." And he goes, what? And he goes, I'm serious. Take a lap. And then the dude's running, and he's like an out of shape dad. He's running as fast as he can. And he's like, I'm timing you faster. And so anytime somebody asks me something dumb at the gym, I'll be like, you know what?
Take a lap.
Take a lap. It's snowing outside. Get out there. Take a lap, dude. What are you doing?
But yeah, I think that's the key. It's just making this whole thing fun. Even now, still making it fun. Sean always talks smack to me.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, old man, always, doing that, and always want to roll, So, but we have fun with it,
And that's a perfect example. Sean's a guy that we've trained with when Kyle moved and we were brand new purple belts and we were in our training in our garage. Sean was one of the guys that was training with us, and, it's been our friend. I mean, since before that, but more since then. And, he was out for a while. And then when he came back, as silly as this sounds, as cheesy as this sounds, it made my heart smile. We were sitting on the side and we were talking. It was his first night back. And he was we were just going back and forth, like, what's life like? What's, this like? What's that like? And he goes, you still doing personal training? I'm like, nah, dude, I've been personal training like 4 or 5 years. And he goes, really? He goes, do you remember? Like, we would get done training and you would have to like go in and go to bed because you would get up at 4 the next day and start personal training. And I'm like, man, it's obviously, yes, I remember that, but it's just not something that I had even thought of. And it just kind of for a second put me back to that place. And even though I was trying so hard to be a good adult jiu-jitsu competitor at the time, fun was still the primary focus. We were still just having fun, and it was like, we always talk about how our garage would be way too hot in the summer. It'd be like 110 degrees in the summer. And
it would be frozen in the winter. The mats would be concrete because it's so cold.
Yeah, it was like we finally started to keep heaters in there when Huff's toe. Never mind. Just that the people that got to be there, we always reference it as this sacred, amazing place. And then the people that they called the Blue Room, the place that we opened our first gym, which was an apartment.
The Green Room.
The Blue Room. No, the next place.
Oh, yes. Saying. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so, the BJJ Garage is what we called.
Yeah.
The Jiu-Jitsu Garage is what we called the Jiu-Jitsu Garage. Then when we moved to an actual place, actually had a business, we rented an apartment and knocked out the walls. And that was where we start to do jiu-jitsu. And people will talk about the Blue Room. Not just our guys. Like, people will, because we had these big open mats where people would come in. And people will be like, man, remember that place? That was so fun. That was so cool. And it was horrible. It was 700 square feet of mat in about an 800 square foot room. And then, like, people were rolling on the carpet on the other, those 50 square feet of bonuses on each side. And it was too hot. The ceilings were low. We would have 30 people on those mats. You'd be stepping on people's faces. But it was so much fun.
Man, gym memories. Yeah, I remember when I was young, we'd go to the gym and squat every Friday at 11 o'clock. Mark Perkins, John Burns, there was a group of us that squatted, and I would listen to ZZ Top Tush on the way every Friday going to Spartan Health Spa.
All right.
Yeah.
And then
gym memories.
What would you eat after?
Oh, Panteras and chocolate milk, man.
Panteras and chocolate milk.
Because you're trying to gain weight.
I knew that was what it was.
Perk could drink a gallon of chocolate milk and eat a whole Panteras. He was 330 though, 340.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And what's cool too, though, is you're friends with those guys still.
Yeah.
You form, and it's not like you guys are deadlifting on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
You form friendships in any athletic, I think.
Because you're going to war together in one way or another, and that brings people together.
And it's like Chewy always references it as shared suffering. He's like, we suffered together, and it builds a bond.
It does. And even sharing the mats with someone, an opponent, man, that's a time, that's a space, So it's interesting.
Yeah, you say that. I just the thought that popped into my head when you said that is like, for me, and I don't think I've even said anything about this person, so I'm just gonna lean into it. Screw it. But for me, seeing what happened with Andrew Wiltsey over the last few months affected me, I think, more than most people. And I think it has more to do with, for context for people that don't know, Wiltsey had a very public mental health breakdown that was just really, really hard to watch. It was on social media a lot. But also for me, I've known Andrew, first time I trained with him, he was a white belt. I was a purple belt. And I mean, he was incredible back then as a white belt. And then, they Daisy Fresh, like 90 minutes from us, not far. And there were times at each belt I would go up there and I would train with him. And then he was always like a belt behind me. we're always the same size. And there was always, you're going to have, in our area, you're always going to have the comparison. How do you think you would do if you competed with Wiltsey? How is this going to be if you compete with Wiltsey? And that was like always the question. And so I knew there's a stopping point when it comes to belts. I knew at black belt that the match was going to happen. And they, when they were doing the Fuji World Pros, Brian Imahol sent me a text and said, hey, he said, do you want to be the main event on this next Fuji World Pro? And I said, is it against Wiltsey? And he said, of course it is.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, of course. And he triangled me. And, I've referenced that before. I've referenced how crazy good he felt. It's probably in our messenger somewhere, but me and Heath even talked about it the next day. And I was like, Heath, your boy's incredible.
His transitions were just unbelievable in his attacks.
Unbelievable. And, but having that comparison so much, like, there is this level of like, we were always competitors against each other. We're never on a team together, anything like that. And it's just, there's something about just coming up together and being some of the only guys in the Midwest at that time that are even coming up and that are trying to compete at the big tournaments. And yeah, there was just something about seeing it. As actually, like for me, that was when I deleted Facebooks, when I deleted Instagram.
Couldn't watch that stuff anymore.
I couldn't see it anymore.
I get it. I can't watch that. There are people who post things, and I can see the mental illness. I can't watch it. I just cannot do it.
And here's the thing. If you really look at the top of your feed when you go on Instagram, and I challenge anyone to do this, and you go 5 posts, there's no way you don't see some mental health problem, some body dysmorphia problem where you're editing your picture, some I need to fake what my life is where I am doing this.
Social media is horrible.
Well, and that's my point is everybody knows about the Wiltsey thing. And the reason is because that is what social media is for. Social media is for that. And my proof is it's always at the top of your feed. You could not avoid that stuff. Even though it was heartbreaking to watch, you could not avoid it.
Because that's what the algorithm did, right?
And that's unless you
And
delete.
Wiltsey was honestly cool. You know,
I never had any negative experience. I mean, besides when he triangled me, I never had any negative experience with him at all.
Was
and
always
Bird the same.
They
Bird
always spoke well of you. They were just
and that was like always was kind to me. And yeah, I just
I feel you. I hate that. Yeah.
And but yeah, that is random note. Maybe let's move on. So we went tips to keep your kids in jiu-jitsu. Okay, I thought this was funny. Is Steve the toughest pastor in the world?
No, there's other guys. Adam Miller. I just bought one of his instructionals. He's probably 50.
Adam Miller, was he a fighter?
No, he's a jiu-jitsu guy. I think he's under Jeff Curran or Pedro Sawyer. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah. So Jeff Curran, is he a Chicago guy?
They're located in Kentucky I think they're in the area of Scott Smith there. I think that's where they are.
Are they all in Louisville? Is that
I'm thinking. I'm not sure, but he's a pastor, and I'm sure he's 50 years old, somewhere around there. So, no, I'm not. Yeah, I wouldn't even claim that. So, but I'd fight any pastor.
I know you would.
Yeah,
I know you would.
To the death. Because we're all going to the same place anyway.
Yeah, you know what? That's the beauty of salvation. Winner lives, loser lives forever. Have you ever gotten to jiu-jitsu a churchgoer?
More than once, bro. You mean in it?
Well, yeah, that's true. You've invited a lot of churchgoers to jiu-jitsu and beaten them up.
That's
not
normal. Necessarily beat them up.
But yeah, in a real life situation.
I almost got in a fight in church one time because some guy said I did communion wrong. Do you remember that?
No,
you remember that?
I don't remember that.
So this guy he just came to church. He was obviously off, claimed that he goes, I used to be bipolar or something. I don't remember what the word was.
I used to be bipolar, but now I'm just polar. Now I'm good.
But he obviously was off, but still you get that a lot. But anyway, did communion, and he said I did something wrong. And I'm like, okay, noted. No big deal. And I walked away, and he reached out and grabbed me by the arm and spun me back.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's when you hit that arm wrench,
Dude,
that Orlando Sanchez
Yeah,
on
and
Sean Strickland arm wrench.
I actually reacted to that.
Yeah.
And
When was this? How long ago was this?
probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Really?
There was a security guard near us, one of our guys from church, and he totally panicked.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I got really,
Ready to go.
yeah, because I just pointed in his face and said, hey, don't ever put your hands on me again.
Yeah.
Because he kind of violently grabbed me. And so, yeah, but I didn't think about it. It was just my natural reaction, because I actually did think about it, because when he did it, I was
Ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go just naturally. And so the security guy I'm like, oh man, it's good,
Yep.
So yeah, so I almost did,
Oh, that would have
but
been awesome. That story would have been way better.
I've been threatened on multiple occasions, so yeah, it's a crazy situation.
Yeah, we always
You wouldn't think that, but it's a very interesting job. One of my buddies told me, he said that the most betrayed profession is psychiatrists. And I think what he said was they get betrayed 7 times in a lifetime. And he said, and this guy was a pastor, he said pastors get betrayed 7 times per year. And so I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I started going through that. I'm like, wow, that's crazy, because the expectation is really, really high and the support is not very high. You know what I'm saying? People expect, you're kind of, in a sense, kind of standing in the gap between people and the Lord. And so they expect a lot out of you.
And you're just a guy.
You're just a broken, messed up person, just like everyone else. So just doing the best you can.
So, parallels between being a pastor and a jiu-jitsu coach. That was another one of the listener questions.
I think there are parallels. My pastoring is more teaching, and jiu-jitsu coaching. To me, everything that I think about has a framework in it. Pastoring and teaching, and like, I think that the jiu-jitsu Jesus parallel is real, and it's very cool, because to me it's like jiu-jitsu is exercise to me, but it's also mental health, helps my brain. So I combine those two together. Like I said earlier, I start my day with my quiet time, calms my brain. My jiu-jitsu is for my mental health, but I have a lot of guys that go to our gym now that come to church. Actually, they came to Maddie's dedication, and they have still showed up there. So we have a lot of people who go to church. There's a lot of, like Watson Jr., Adam Crutchfield. There's this group of them and you're in that group too, where we read the Bible together each day, and we're all in that thing. So there's just there's just a lot of parallels. There's a great opportunity to. I think that, like, with me in sharing my faith, I don't do that aggressively. There's a quote, I think I'm going to use it this weekend, the quote is, you don't have to necessarily tell people you're a Christian, but they shouldn't be surprised when they find out. And so I think that your lifestyle is going to reflect that a lot. Your lifestyle creates questions for people. Hey, how do you handle that situation? Or why are you different in that situation? So I don't know. I don't know if that really answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think I think it's in Matthew McConaughey's book. He talks about, he saw his friends, they had an ichthus on their car, like the Jesus fish on their car. And that the history of that is that is how Christians used to define themselves. That was a signal to show other Christians, was the secret message. The ichthus.
They would meet. They would have a meeting based on that. Yeah.
And so he said, Dad, why don't we put one of these stickers on our car? and he said something along the lines of, you should, your action should show what you believe, not your car.
Yeah.
And I think that is, in that same thing, because that's, let's talk bad about Christians for a second.
Well, go ahead.
Most Christians that you hear from, that people know, they generally have a bad experience when they go like, oh, this person told me about God. I don't want that. I don't want what this person has, and you have most people that don't believe you talk to, and they have experiences that are like that. And I think that my biggest parallel that you would see between jiu-jitsu gyms and churches is that they are both communities filled with very, very, very broken people. And most of the time, we're only good at seeing how broken everyone else is.
Yeah.
And you see that when you hear most problems in your jiu-jitsu school, a lot of them come from that. I was talking to Mark Rosencutter about the Avandro and Hinner debate that they had.
Yeah, I was talking to him about that as well.
And so he was like one of the only guys I knew that had listened to it. But his perspective, like, what's your perspective, Mark? And he goes, it seems to me, he's like, I get when people are saying like, oh, he's just a disgruntled employee. He said, it seems to me like he seeked these guys out expecting them to be perfect. And when they were human, it ruined everything for him. And I'm like, yeah, it's a
great insight.
And you see that.
Yeah, your heroes should be dead. That way they can't disappoint you.
Yeah, and then they find out that they own slaves, and then you're like, darn, that guy's gone too, And so, that is the, and we all, I'm never going to get on the podcast and be like, hey guys, here are all the places that I'm broken, and this is all the places that I fail. But there's a bunch of them, we could have a whole podcast on it.
Me too. That's the point, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that is.
So, yeah, a couple of thoughts with that. So going back to what we said earlier, there was a story, I think it was Augustus, I'm not really sure, but it was a church father. And he told this kid, he had a mentor, the kid was his protege, young man. He says, hey, we're going to go preach the gospel. And so they set out in the morning and they went and they fed the homeless. They helped people do different things, old people who needed help in these particular things. When they got to the end of the day, the kid said, hey, I thought we were going to preach the gospel. And he goes, yeah, we did. The whole idea is to preach the gospel, but use words when necessary. And so I think it goes back to that action thing. But going back to, here's the thing about Christianity, you're going to see a lot of different things, like the Rogan thing with Wes Huff was good, and biblical archaeology and things like that, right? And by the way, people, there's so many people who really want Rogan to become a Christian.
Oh, yeah.
They're just, and they keep saying, oh, if we get this guy and we get this guy. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. He's been presented the information, and now it's his choice. That's really what it comes. You're not going to convince a guy intellectually more than he's been. He's had the best guys in the world on that, and he's a smart guy, and he gets to make his decision. That's, but it's not like you're going to intellectually win this argument.
Outsmart him into Christianity.
It's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. And so I just find it, I thought that was really interesting, though, on that. But what you said earlier, I'll give you a version, gospel story, like how the gospel works, Christian worldview, at least the way that I explained it. So, and Wes Huff and Rogan were talking about this. They were saying, okay, in the beginning, there's a creator. So they accepted that fact, okay? And this creator brings this creation into existence. And I think there are two options from there. And the options are either something came from nothing, or something outside of time and space as we know it brought time and space into existence. So someone in another dimension. Does that make sense? So in the beginning, God is kind of how it starts, right? And so God creates, and he said, oh, this is good. And then he says, oh, this is very good. And he creates man in the middle of that. And he tells man, listen, he wanted a family. I want a relationship. It's not that he needed it. This is just what he wanted in the middle of that. Okay. So then he says to man, he goes, okay, I'm going to give you a helpmate because just talks about companionship and how important that is. But he said, but yeah, I want you not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And some people say it's apple, whatever. Because if you do, you will surely die. Why did he do that? Well, the reason is because you cannot create, if you want to have a relationship, a loving relationship, you have to create choices. You can't just create robots to say, love me. Make sense? So the choice is, if you want to follow me, you can follow me. But if you want to go on your own, you go on your own. That's all that choice was. It's autonomy. So he eats, his wife eats, and then they blame each other, blah, blah, blah. Well, they didn't die physically, they died spiritually. And here's what I mean by that. There was this connection to God. We all have an innate sense of a need for a spiritual connection. We all have that. You hear people talk about meditation and things like that. It's just it's a metaphysical kind of thing, okay? So he dies spiritually. They had this connection where they walked in the garden together. And even then, Adam was given work to do to tend to the garden, okay? So anyway, he dies spiritually, which means the spiritual connection to God was broken because of sin. Make sense? And so we're all born in what's called Adam. We're born in Adam, meaning we are born separated from God. And then we are born again. You hear born again Christians in Christ. We're born again in Jesus. And so Jesus says, hey, I have come to give you life and give it to you to the fullest. That's what he's talking about. He's saying he's given you life, eternal life. Eternal life doesn't start in eternity. It starts now based on a decision. But let me go back. So the rest of the Bible after that fall of man is designed to point to Jesus to being the redemptive person in the middle of that. And so then when you become a Christian, you become alive again to God. And that's all Christianity is, okay? You're alive again to God. Then we have a job as Christians, and the job is to renew our mind. Now, the problem, and Wes Huff said this in the Rogan podcast, Jesus is against moralism. Christianity is not moralism. That's the problem. People think it's moralism. No, it's not. Christianity is a belief in Christ alone. Will it create moralism? Of course. But it doesn't always do that because you have to do the work. In Romans, it talks about this. We're to renew our minds. We renew our minds with the Word of God. And that way we begin to think the things that God thinks and line our hearts up with God. And that's where Christian maturity comes from. That maturity will then bring in a moralistic behavior, or you'll look at life differently. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is the moral response that would actually matter, that would actually be sustainable, comes second.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not.
But it doesn't always even come for some people. They can be a Christian and still be messed up, and that's the problem. And the problem I see also is Christians think that non-Christians should act like Christians. Like, bro, that's not how it works. And that's where you get the negative, I think. What you get, you got to, and I think a lot of it comes from insecure Christians who are not, super grounded in their faith. And so they feel like if they can bring you in, that's going to make their faith better. You know what I'm saying? And so I think, and obviously I'm being a little more critical. Now, don't get me wrong. There are wonderful people that, like, I always say as a church leader, 98% of your people are great. The 2% are neurotic. You just got to figure out which 2%. And then every 100, it grows from 2 to 4 to 6 or whatever. And so trying to balance that out. And those are the people that suck the life out of you, unfortunately.
And yeah, you see that it's in human nature is, we were talking about this yesterday at the gym. We're talking about people on social media who hate themselves. How it tends to look is those are the people that will attack everybody else and say, this is what you're doing wrong. And it's a way to avoid saying what I'm doing wrong and changing it, But if I'm doing this one thing right, this is what I do right, you should be doing this, right? It's like, dude, you're doing 10 things wrong, right? And you see that in jiu-jitsu, you see that on social media, you see that in the faith all the time of, well, this is where you're wrong. And all of it does come back to knowing that, oh, I'm wrong. I'm broken. I'm the one. So why try, the verse is, why remove the speck from your brother's eye when you have a log in yours? And it is that idea of like, remove the log from your eye so you can see clearly. And you will spend your whole life trying to remove the log from your eye. And you'll stop focusing on where everyone else is a failure, where everyone else is evil.
Self-righteousness is one heck of a drug. And it's the only problem that people have, that they don't know that they have it. And so it's just so easy to, think you're better than other people because of these particular things. So it's interesting. I was thinking about Wes Huff and that, just the conversation and how he defends the Bible. It was just interesting. And I think, over the years I've used that, how do you know the Bible's true? Manuscript evidence, archaeological evidence, prophecy, and statistical probability. And so look, if, you're looking at 40 different authors, 1,600 years, but one common theme, and that's the redemption of man. It's just interesting on how that all of that stuff plays out. So,
tell me about the Gospel of Fitness.
Gospel of Fitness. Okay, so it is my life story, basically. Mom was reading it, and I'm like, oh, you're reading my book, because she doesn't read that stuff, you know. I go, what do you think? She goes, it's really good. I'm like, oh.
When you told me that, I fell out of my chair.
I know.
I was like, this is going to be big, man.
So, it's actually, it's kind of, here's what it is. Like in my personal training business, I have a system that I use, and I have a lot of ideas behind it, and the best way to maintain longevity and age gracefully and all those types of things. And I also, though, kind of like what we do here, just talking about my faith a lot. I don't bring that up, but people ask me. They know I'm a pastor, so we talk about that. So it's really my 3W approach to fitness, weight training, walking, watch your diet, and then the nuances that go in the middle of that. And so over the years, I've just figured out what works for people and how not to be in the gym every single day, but still get great results and then remain healthy, so that when you do get to be 60, you can still train with your grandsons. You can still play with your grandsons. It's hugely important. What are the last 10, 20 years of your life going to look like? That's really important. Most people, they get to about 50. If they don't do anything, they get to about 50, and they're fine. Then it starts falling apart.
And it falls apart fast.
It falls apart really fast. And the problem is, and I've said this before, one guy said this, he said, you spend the first 50 years of your life gaining wealth and neglecting your health, and the last years of your life spending your wealth to try to regain your health. And I just want people to balance that out. I think that's really important. Both of my parents died at 49. And so, like, man, that's too young, and they had a terrible lifestyle. So that motivated me to look at this. And I always love the fitness thing. So it's actually a really good book. I really like it. I'm really proud of it. And I have a copy of it, a copy that we're going through right in front of me. But I get my last copy today. I just posted for the first time. It will be out on the 31st of January. I need everybody to buy it on the 31st.
On the 31st.
Yes. So we need, and I'll post on that, but we need people to buy it on that day. Because it'll drive me to the top of Amazon. It's weird. There's a lot of work that goes along with it behind the scenes, but I think it's going to be great. I have a book tour set in Florida. Another guy said possibly North Carolina. So I have a lot of fun stuff coming up, a few shows to be on. So I'm excited about it.
And I think just like with anything, it's once the ball starts rolling, I think it'll really start rolling with it.
I think so too.
I know, I've seen you working on it for such a long time.
Yeah.
And obviously working on the method for 40 years, but
still refine it. Still refining it.
But getting to put on paper and to have an actual publisher publish a book.
Crazy. It did. And honestly, I wasn't searching for it. It actually came to me. That's why I know I'm supposed to do it. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. It's one of those things where all this stuff started coming together without me trying. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to do it. So
at 63, though, even if you know you're supposed to do something, it's so different. Why still have the ferocity and the commitment to do it?
You got to live your passion, bro. You got to live what's in your heart. You die when you stop living what's in your heart. You got to stay in it. You got to find the things that you find joy in, and that's how you live your life. Because when people feel that passion and that joy, it's going to change their life. I love helping other people. I just love doing that. It's just fun to me. And I think I also love to correct error, and there's so much error in the area of fitness. It's just crazy to me. Mm-hmm. It's criminal. The stuff that I see is absolutely criminal. Mm-hmm. And so, but I don't focus on that. I only focus on the positive. I take that negative, it motivates me. I'm like, oh, that's not what I'm doing. We're going to go in this direction. So that's kind of how I control that, or how I do that.
What if somebody wakes up tomorrow morning because they have the reminder set on their phone like we told them to, and they get on Amazon, they buy the Gospel of Fitness? What result?
And then they give us a review.
And then they give us a 5-star review. They comment for the YouTube algorithm, so this podcast episode blows up. They do everything right because they care. And they're not bad people. And they don't want to spend eternity in hell. That's terrible.
That's terrible.
What a bad joke.
You should cut that out.
What a bad joke. But for those people that buy that, what result could they?
Well, the title, the subtitle, it's a rational approach to aging gracefully, how to lose up to 20 pounds and gain strength in 8 weeks. If you need to lose 20 pounds, there's a way to do that. So, but yeah, you're going to get stronger. You're going to feel better. You're going to save your joints. You're going to train your muscles and not hurt your joints. And that's really what it comes down to.
As I age, tell me why strength matters.
Because every single year after the age of 35, you begin to decline and lose your strength. And that is, it just, you lose every single, even now, obviously I've lost a lot of strength. I'm still strong for my age, but I'm not 30 strong. I'm not 40 strong. I'm not 50 strong. You know what I'm saying? You will age. So the point is, that is the number one thing for aging is the loss of muscle. The number one thing. There's a study I just read that type 2 diabetes increases mortality by 50%, high blood pressure by 20, high cholesterol by 10, blah, blah, blah. Building strength increases your longevity by 250%, and increasing your cardiovascular capacity increases longevity by 400%. So basically, getting stronger and being able to maintain your pace for a period of time is going to create some longevity for you.
And it's simply practical for your life.
Yeah.
Being able to walk up the stairs, being able to pick up your grandchild.
Exactly.
Those things matter so much. But I think that's where we'll leave this one, man.
Perfect.
I don't think there's anything to add.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Thank you for being on the show.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Josh.